As melhores saudações para todos os amigos telespectadores do canal 49 e o programa Os Portugueses no Vale, que está no ar a partir de agora e durante os próximos 30 minutos. O programa Os Portugueses no Vale há quase 3 décadas ao serviço das comunidades de língua e de origem portuguesa no centro da Califórnia. São 52 emissões por ano, 52 semanas dedicadas à nossa comunidade portuguesa e já há quase 3 décadas. Neste programa, neste que é o terceiro de uma série de 4 programas, que intercalamos semana sim, semana não, vamos voltar a estar com a Organização Nacional, a Portuguese-American Leadership Council of the United States, ou seja, a PALCUS, como assim é conhecida, e que também está ao serviço da nossa comunidade portuguesa há praticamente 3 décadas, e é uma organização nacional, é a única que tem, portanto, uma presença na capital dos Estados Unidos da América e que tem uma presença em muitos estados da União Americana, com membros da sua diretoria e delegados em muitos estados onde há comunidades de origem portuguesa e também não só, porque, como sabemos, a nossa comunidade, muitas vezes nós pensamos que estamos apenas na costa leste, naqueles estados que toda a gente conhece, onde há portugueses, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Nova York e New Jersey, e depois que estamos na costa oeste, na Califórnia. Mas não é o caso. Hoje há uma grande comunidade, por exemplo, na Virgínia, há portugueses nas Carolinas, quer do norte, quer do sul, há portugueses na Geórgia, há portugueses também na Flórida, uma grande comunidade já em vários pontos em várias cidades da Flórida. Há portugueses também em Ohio, em Illinois. Há portugueses também aqui nos outros estados do oeste americano, como mais ao norte. Há uma comunidade portuguesa, quer em Washington, quer, portanto, em Oregon e também a leste de nós, aqui também junto, em Nevada, em Idaho, como sabemos, em Texas e Arizona. Portanto, os portugueses estão um bocadinho espalhados por toda a parte. E com esta americanização da nossa comunidade, ou seja, com as segundas, terceiras e sucessivas gerações, cada vez mais as pessoas não estão num lado geográfico onde vive uma comunidade portuguesa. Há portugueses, portanto, nos mais variadíssimos estados da União Americana. E por isso que é importante haver uma organização nacional que não tenha o mesmo papel que uma organização local. A PALCUS não tem nem deve ter o mesmo papel que a Organização do Espírito Santo ou a Organização de Nossa Senhora de Fátima, ou uma organização recreativa, ou um clube desportivo, ou uma organização cultural ligada a uma paróquia. Não, a PALCUS deve ser, portanto, uma federação dessas organizações e de grupos também profissionais. Deve albergar, portanto, associações de professores, associações que são de origem portuguesa, não só que dão português, mas que são de origem portuguesa. Deve albergar, portanto, associações de engenheiros luso-descendentes, de advogados luso-descendentes, de empresários luso-descendentes, de artistas luso-descendentes, para que assim tenhamos todos uma espécie de rede, como se diz em inglês, e também se usa muito a palavra no mundo português, uma network de luso-descendentes, de imigrantes e luso-descendentes em todos os estados da União Americana que tenham uma ligação forte a esta organização nacional que se chama PALCUS, Portuguese-American Leadership Council of the United States. Vamos dedicar, como eu disse, 4 programas a esta organização e já dedicamos 2. Este é o terceiro programa e de uma forma peculiar, ou seja, vamos estar em Washington, D.C., a capital dos Estados Unidos da América, onde neste último mês de junho deste corrente ano de 2018, a PALCUS teve, portanto, uma convenção, a primeira convenção nacional, inaugural, onde estiveram mais de 200 de pessoas e onde se debateu, portanto, a atualidade das vivências portuguesas em terras americanas e se falou um bocadinho também de alguns projetos para o futuro que vão aparecer, alguns já apareceram e outros vão aparecer nas próximas semanas e nos próximos meses. Vamos então até Washington, D.C., onde é importante ter uma voz. Para além dos 3 congressistas luso-descendentes que nós temos, é importante que tenhamos uma voz de uma organização que seja uma federação das nossas organizações e dos nossos profissionais em várias partes da União Americana, com uma presença, portanto, no mundo político dos Estados Unidos da América, para que a nossa comunidade não fique esquecida. Vamos então até Washington, D.C., como disse há pouco, com muito gosto do Canal 49 e o programa Os Portugueses no Vale apresentam, portanto, estes 4 programas dedicados a esta Convenção Nacional da Portuguese-American Leadership Council of the United States, PALCUS. E se querem ser membros, sabem como é, palcus.org. PALCUS e a nossa comunidade em destaque.
Dear friends, allow me to speak not as Secretary General of the United Nations, but as a proud Portuguese. And I must tell you that the more I go around the world, and as you can imagine, as High Commissioner for Refugees, I really went around the world. And the more I see the world from the vantage point of the United Nations in New York, the more reasons I find to be a proud Portuguese. And today I would like to underline two of the reasons that justify it. And one of the reasons is what the Portuguese diaspora represents in the world. There are Portuguese everywhere, and they are the best ambassadors of Portugal everywhere. And when I look at the Portuguese-American community, I am impressed by the vibrant capacity that you represent. I'm impressed by your fantastic contribution to not only the economy, but the society of this country, the culture of this country, and to the fact that this community is, in the United States of America, as I said, the best ambassador that Portugal could have. With, of course, all due respect to our very dear ambassador in Washington. But there is a second reason, and that second reason is related to Portugal itself. Now, many times we, in the past, had this idea that we had been a great country, but that things had got worse with time, and that the pride of being Portuguese was very much related to our history, to the glorious periods of our past, to the expansion when the Portuguese were controlling the seas from the coast of Brazil to the coast of China. I have to say that today the reason to be proud about Portugal is today's Portugal. And you can't imagine how Portugal today is popular in the world. Everybody wants to go to Portugal, to visit Portugal. To the extent that, to be honest, sometimes going in the center of the city and going around, I have difficulties in finding Portuguese in the middle of the tourists. Because we are indeed being visited by people from all over the world, and even from the United States. We have seen a dramatic increase in the number of visitors. But this is not the most interesting aspect. The most interesting aspect is that there are more and more people are deciding to go and live in Portugal and to buy property in Portugal to live there. And not only retirees, because of the good weather or because of the good health services that we have. No, more and more young people from all over the world, young entrepreneurs with startups to be launched, choose Portugal because also of the fact that today we are a modern country with excellent infrastructure and infrastructure, and we are, above all, an extremely welcoming country with fantastic and friendly people. And everybody that goes to Portugal loves Portugal and loves the Portuguese people. And this is something that makes me be very, very proud about my country today. But there are other reasons even more important. We, in Portugal, and I am here with a Portuguese-American community. This community is the product of migration. By the way, the United States of America as a country is the product of migration. Migration is a good thing, if not... If not, the United States of America would not exist, and this community would not be here. But the truth is that migration became the most divisive issue in most political systems around the world, with one exception, Portugal. We have always been a country of emigration. We became in the 70s, 80s of last century a country of immigration. Then, with the economic difficulties of the beginning of this century, we again became a country of emigration, and now, last year, for the first time in several years, the net result is again an inflow. We are now becoming again a country of immigration. But in the most difficult moments of the economic crisis, when all over Europe migration was a divisive issue, and where we have seen migration generating new political parties, populist parties, xenophobic parties, with lots of success in their own countries, and the same in other parts of the world, in the most difficult period of our economic crisis, when lots of Portuguese were leaving the country, when we had high unemployment, more than 500,000 people unemployed, and the number of migrants in Portugal coming from Brazil, from the former Portuguese colonies, from Eastern Europe, from different other areas of the world, probably around the same 500,000 people. Never ever in any political campaign, any meaningful political party said what I hear in so many other parts of the world. Look, the way to give jobs to the Portuguese is to kick out the migrants. Never. In Portugal, never a campaign against migration has managed to put anyone in parliament. And this is indeed something I am very proud of. Our capacity to be cosmopolitan, to value diversity, to understand that all societies now are multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-religious, and that is a good thing. But that requires a lot of investment in social cohesion, in inclusion, for people to be able to respect each other, to live together in harmony, as I believe we have managed in our own country. And that is one of the reasons why people want to live in Portugal. It's because it's safe, low levels of criminality, low impact of drugs, very peaceful in all aspects, because of the social cohesion that existed and because of the mutual respect that exists among the different components of the Portuguese society. Now, it's true that we have, in the way migration has developed in recent times, very serious problems. Migration is a good thing, but unfortunately, it has not been managed. And because it has not been managed, we witness two things. First, a lot of migrants suffering terribly in the hands of smugglers and traffickers that today control those flows, with their human rights being violated in horrible ways. We have seen the images in Libya of migrants that, as they could not be moved to Europe and the profit was not possible in that, were sold as slaves again. Slaves in the 21st century. So a lot of suffering for people, and also the chaos in some of these movements that creates anxieties and problems in many communities that seem to be invaded, and with that generate a malaise, a number of feelings that, of course, facilitate the life of those movements of extreme right that in Europe more and more have used the xenophobic populism as a tool for political purposes. So it is clear that an effort must be made in the international community to organize things, to have international cooperation for a migration in which there is a capacity to take into account the interests of the migrants and the interests of the states. And there are three things that seem to me very important for me. First, that development cooperation policies are oriented, taking into account human mobility, to create opportunities for people to be able to find a future in their own countries. There shouldn't be migration out of despair. There should be migration out of hope. And at the same time, we would need to have more opportunities of organized legal migration, and at the same time, more capacity to crack down on smugglers and traffickers. Unfortunately, we see much more efficiency in arresting drug traffickers than in arresting traffickers of human beings. And this is something that, of course, needs to be thought of, because we need to have a much stronger international cooperation in the ways we crack down on those horrible criminals that make enormous fortunes with the suffering of so many human beings. So let's take profit of migration as a good thing, but let's organize it in a way that it doesn't become a dramatic political problem. And at the same time, having been for 10 years responsible for refugees, let's make sure that refugee protection, in accordance with international law, is also given to the people in need, and that we reestablish the integrity of the refugee protection regime everywhere. Now, what for me is extremely important when I am with a community like this is to feel that those values of the Enlightenment that are probably the best contribution of both the United States and Europe to our modern civilization, the values related to the primacy of reason, the values related to tolerance, that those values that we are proud of are deeply rooted in the Portuguese-American community here in the United States. And I'm also extremely happy to see that this community has evolved in an extremely positive way. My first visit to the US was 40-something years ago. And Portuguese were always considered very well. I mean, people recognized as honest people, hardworking people, committed to do the right things. But I was sometimes shocked. I remember in a restaurant, good restaurant owned by a Portuguese, it was a rich man, and his 3 sons were working with him in the restaurant. And I asked, why don't you send your sons to the university? No, I want them here working with me. And at the time, I also felt not only that the community was not really giving enough attention to education, to the future of the next generations, but also that there was a certain reluctance in getting involved in politics. A little bit because of, the origins of Portugal, when in the times of Salazar, to be political was, of course, a dangerous thing. Now, this has suffered a fantastic positive transformation. Now we see members of this community in leading roles in education, in knowledge, in science, in law, in the economy, in the entrepreneur community. And we see more and more Portuguese candidates for different areas of public service, members of the National Congress and Congress of States, more and more involved in the politics of the country, more and more contributing to the definition of the future of this own country in a positive way. And I must say, it is for me an enormous pleasure to be able to congratulate you on these fantastic achievements that you are registering. You are now more and more a vibrant community, more and more an influential community, more and more one more solid reason for me to be very proud to be Portuguese. Thank you.
I would like also to recognize the presence of my colleagues from the Camões Institute in the USA, José Adão from Newark. He works closely with the Consulate General of Portugal in Newark. José Rodrigues from the Boston University and UMass Boston, as well as Sandra Pires from Georgetown University, who are actually here in this room today. And also the counselors for the Portuguese communities in the U.S. who have been instrumental to our work here in the U.S. as well. I would also like to recognize Dr. Dan Davison. He's been an inspiration to myself and to many of the Portuguese language teachers in the United States. He is the President Emeritus for American Councils for International Education, and he is also the Senior Academic Advisor for AC. He works also very closely with the College Board, which has been instrumental to speak about some strategies that I will speak further. And also, and finally, Uma Manati, the Assistant Program Manager, Assessment and Curriculum Development for American Councils. And thank you so much for your support. I'm going to speak about 3 aspects very quickly. One of them is the role of Camões Institute in the U.S. and around the world, and also the role of our education office in the U.S., and as well about the annual Portuguese exam that I know some of you are not aware, but it's a big initiative of our embassy, of our government, and our minister, and also of the Camões Institute. We've been very closely working about this exam that will promote Portuguese language in the United States. So the Camões Institute is a public institution under the Portuguese Ministry of Education, of Foreign Affairs, whose mission is to propose and implement the Portuguese cooperation policy, education policy, dissemination and promotion of Portuguese language and culture abroad. Other important interests of the Camões concerns the designing, promoting, proposing, supporting and implementing measures to encourage the dissemination of different forms of artistic expression by supporting the publication of Portuguese authors in foreign languages and giving scholarships to students and teachers on the international network. It also ensures that the representation of the country in negotiation, cultural and cooperation programs from kindergarten to elementary school, secondary education, and also higher education. Like our minister said this morning, or mentioned this morning, we expect that at least 261 million people speak Portuguese in 5 continents, in 9 countries. And by 2050, we expect that at least 300 million people speak Portuguese around the world, especially, like he said, in the southern hemisphere. Portugal, like he actually mentioned, and I think this is very relevant facts for people, is that Portuguese is the 5th language with the largest number of internet users, the 3rd most used language on Facebook, and also the official or working language in 32 international organizations. Also, the Camões Institute works at least in 84 countries in different variety of programs and projects. The CPLP plays a very important role, and here, with the help and support from our embassy in Washington, D.C., we've been working very closely with all the other embassies from the Portuguese-speaking countries. But the CPLP, which is the community of Portuguese-speaking countries, have been promoting dialogue concerning issues that directly affect member states, as well as promotes Portuguese language as global communication language, a language of knowledge and business, in partnership with the International Institute of Portuguese Language located in Cape Verde. The CPLP also enhances the value of each diaspora community in the preservation of the CPLP cultures and Portuguese language. One of example of this good collaboration with other countries is the fact that American Councils is working with all of us together in the United States to promote Portuguese language. And I would like to say that we've been the pioneers, and I have to thank the Ambassador Fezas Vital, because he has been instrumental to promote the Portuguese language in this country as well. As a Camões Education Office, we offer teaching and learning of Portuguese language and culture in elementary, secondary, and higher education levels. We do offer pedagogical support for teachers' training on didactics of Portuguese as a foreign language and as a second language and as a heritage language. We also offer books through the Camões Institute to every single children in the U.S. that attend Portuguese schools around the country in different states. And we also provide CAPEL exams, which is a certification for Portuguese as a foreign language, in our consulates, which means that a lot of Americans that want to be Portuguese and they want to acquire Portuguese citizenship, we do offer those resources, and we give them the exams, such as Universidade Aberta certification as well for teachers who want to have degrees in Portuguese or Portuguese language or other degrees. We also are exam centers for Universidade Aberta. We have established a few memorandums. I'm just going to refer at least 3 or 4. One of them is with the Massachusetts Department of Education, where I'm also a consultant since 2009, so I've been 10 years working closely with the Department of Education, which allow us to bring visiting teachers from Portugal every year to the school districts where we have more significant presence of Portuguese communities. And that's been a wonderful work to work with the Department of Education, because also enhances our relationship with the Department of State of the United States through the visa program that we allow to bring Portuguese teachers from Portugal. Also, the Memorandum of Understanding between Miami-Dade Public Schools. Unfortunately, Alberto Carvalho was not able to attend today, but we did recently a Memorandum of Understanding with Miami-Dade, and we've been supporting at least 7 schools in Miami, and through the Camões Institute, we've been giving a lot of books and materials to the teachers. And in Florida, we have updated the Portuguese Community School of Palm Coast, so we have already more children attending the Portuguese school in Palm Coast. And then I would like to recognize the work from the Luso-American Education Foundation, LAEF, because we've been working with the Protocol of Cooperation in California, and Dinis Borges and José Luís Silva, and a group of teachers from the Camões Institute have been instrumental to that Protocol of Cooperation between the Camões Institute and our office in Lisbon and here in the United States. And finally, the protocols between Camões IP and U.S. universities and colleges, and also with Portuguese community schools in Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York. And in this area specifically, my colleague José Adão has been very instrumental, doing a great job promoting Portuguese in those regions. These protocols also allow them to have a permanent and yearly financial support from the Camões Institute for the examinations and certification of the Portuguese language. I would like to say that challenges for our office and dominant areas in the U.S. where Portuguese is taught, those yellow parts are the most significant areas where our communities are located. But according to our data, Portuguese is taught at elementary and secondary level in public and Portuguese community schools in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Maine, Vermont, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Texas, Georgia, Ohio, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Washington, D.C., Maryland, New York, Connecticut, California, Florida, Utah, and many others. It's been a great experience for us to see how diverse this country is and the autonomy that each Department of Education has, and it's really rewarding on that side. It's like a challenge because we need to promote as much more network with these different departments of education. And Jamie Late is also here today. She's been a wonderful colleague, and I'm sure we want to foster a possible signature of a memorandum of understanding with Utah, which has a very big and large Portuguese program.
E assim, meus amigos, estivemos com o terceiro de 4 programas em inglês, portanto, mas com a presença de temas portugueses. Estivemos em Washington, na capital dos Estados Unidos da América, com a Organização Nacional PALCUS, e aí estivemos, portanto, nesta convenção anual que ocorreu em junho deste ano de 2018, portanto, há poucos meses, na capital estadunidense. Foi com muito gosto que o Canal 49 apresentou o terceiro de 4 programas dedicados a esta convenção nacional, este acontecimento único na vida das comunidades portuguesas aqui dos Estados Unidos da América, com muito gosto para conhecimento dos nossos amigos telespectadores aqui no Vale de São Joaquim, no estado da Califórnia, e através de KNXT.tv em live streaming em toda a parte do mundo. O Canal 49 e o programa Os Portugueses no Vale também agora estamos arquivados na YouTube, portanto não se esqueça, poderá ver o programa Os Portugueses no Vale a qualquer altura. Foi com muito gosto que estive convosco. Até sempre.